People often say, what's wrong with black folks? Why can't they get it together? What's wrong with Latinos? Why aren't they advancing as quickly as they should be? What's wrong with them? Studies have consistently shown for decades that people of color are no more likely to use or sell illegal drugs than whites. Yet they are arrested and incarcerated at grossly disproportionate rates. In some states, 80 to 90% of all drug offenders sent to prison have been one race, African American. And rather than asking what's wrong with them, perhaps we should ask what is wrong with us.
When you were in high school, did you ever drink underage? Did you ever experiment with marijuana? And then very frequently you find people shifting their seat, getting uncomfortable. And this idea of innocence, that other people are the criminals, but not them, is a thoroughly racialized idea. I often point out we're all criminals. We've all made mistakes in our lives. We've all done wrong. Anyone who's an adult has broken the law at some point in their lives. But some of us have the privilege of making certain kinds of mistakes and going on to college or grad school and off to work and never having to check that box on employment applications, while others of us do not. In fact, research shows that a white man with a criminal record is more likely to be hired than a black man without a criminal record. So even this system of mass incarceration, when white folks are ensnared by it, doesn't affect them in the same way. When they're branded criminals and felons, they're not viewed as criminals and felons in the outside world. But that felon label, that criminal label, serves to define who black people are. And in fact, even if you haven't been branded a criminal or felon, you are treated as though there is something about you that is wrong by employers and in the world more broadly. So part of what white privilege is to me is the freedom to make mistakes and go on. That is a privilege that poor folks of color in this country, particularly young people, don't have.
You wrote a great book. It's true and it's lucid, and I'll let you explain the thesis. What is the new Jim Crow?
Well, I refer to mass incarceration as the new Jim Crow because it is a system of racial and social control that is remarkably similar. It functions in a manner that is remarkably similar to old Jim Crow segregation. I mean, in a few short decades, we quintupled our nation's prison population.
How many people are in the prison system?
Over 2 million people are locked behind
30 years ago,
today.
It was like 300,000, right?
Absolutely. In 1970, there were about 300,000 people in prison.
So you're saying, and most of this, of course, is because of the drug war.
Yeah, the war on drugs and the Get Tough movement, the wave of punitiveness.
So now we have a whole lot of people who we call criminals.
Absolutely.
So when you call someone a criminal, even if the crime is smoking pot or whatever, then you can do to them what we used to do to black people under Jim Crow.
Absolutely. Once you're labeled a felon, all the old forms of discrimination are suddenly legal again. Employment discrimination, housing discrimination, denial of the right to vote, exclusion from jury service. In many ways, people who are branded criminals and felons today are subject to second-class treatment, much like, their grandparents or great-grandparents may have been during the Jim Crow era.
Sincere ignorance.